Welcome to Mathematics with Mr. Win. In today's lesson, we are going to learn about solving equations using trial and error. Trial and error is often the most logical way of solving simple equations because whenever we try new things, we try it. If there's a problem with that, we go back and try again, and that's what trial and error stands for. So before we start our lesson, I want to get a couple of things out of the way. In this lesson, I'm going to be asking you some questions as I go. At any point you need some thinking time, I want you to pause the video, think about an answer for that question, and then play it again to check if your answer is correct. So let's get started. What are equations? Equations always contain an equal sign. So let's write down some examples of equations. So for example, I have 2x plus 3 equals 7. So that's an equation which has an equal sign in it. Another one, let's say 9x equals 42. So these are all examples of equations because they all have an equal sign in them. Now we're going to do today's lesson in three parts. The first and foremost, we're going to talk about writing some equations. So here's an example. We've been asked to write an equation to represent each of the following puzzles. So they're starting with, I'm thinking of a number. So let's give the number a pronumeral. So what is pronumeral? Now remember, if you know the answer to this question, keep watching or else pause the video and think of what a pronumeral is. So pronumeral are alphabets we use to represent numbers in an algebraic equation. So we're thinking of a number. Let's just call it as x. So let x be the number. So what we have now done is we've defined the variable x as the number we're thinking. So the first part of the question, so when we are multiplying the number by 8, the answer is 24. So we're multiplying the number is x, so we're multiplying it by 8. So we go 8 times x, and the answer is 24. So to represent the answer, we're going to put an equal sign, and it's equal to 24. Now remember, when we're writing algebraic equations, we don't have to mention the times. So the simplest way of writing this puzzle is going to be 8x equals 24. Now let's go to the second part of the question. When I divide the number by 6, the answer is 4. So let's divide the number. So the number we're thinking of is x. So let's start with x. We're dividing it by 6. Now let's think about this carefully. Now we're going to try and replace this divide symbol with a fraction bar. So let's do that, because the most common way of writing the divide symbol as we progress to a higher level of mathematics is we replace it with a fraction bar. So x divided by 6 can now be written as x divided by 6 with a fraction bar, and the answer, so for the answer we're going to put equals, and the answer for that is equal to 4. And that completes that question. So all we're doing at the moment is we're developing equations from the information given to us. So let's move on to part C here. So part C tells us when I multiply the number by 2, so we're multiplying the number by 2 and then add 4, the answer is 12. So what we're getting here, we're actually having a two-step equation here. So let's start with the first step. So we're multiplying a number by 2. So we're multiplying a number which is x, remember that. We're multiplying that by 2. And then we are adding a 4. And the answer to that is 12. So equals 12. Now again, we don't mention multiplication sign in algebraic equations. So we can rewrite it as 2x plus 4 equals 12. One last example in part 1 today. When I add the number by 4 and then divide by 2, the answer is 10. So we're adding the number by 4, that's the first part, and then we're dividing it by 2. So let's see how we're going to represent this information. So we start with our x, we're adding it by 4. So at the moment I have x plus 4. and I'm dividing it by 2. So remember, we have to divide the whole thing by 2. And the answer for that is equal to 10. And that completes part 1 of our today's lesson. So we have used our knowledge of algebra to develop some equations. Now, in part equation of this lesson, we are going to solve equations by inspection. So let's have a look at this question. So we're trying to solve the equations by inspection. So what does the word solve stand for? Basically, all they're trying to tell us by the word solve is basically find the answer or the value of the pronumerals in the question. Now remember, pronumerals are our alphabets in the question. So if you look at the first question, we have W divided by 3 equals 4. So what's the alphabet here? We're trying to find what is W. So W can be any number. Now this number is divided by 3, and the answer for that is equal to 4. So think of a number that we can divide by 3, and the answer for that is going to be equal to 4. So what's a number that first comes to your mind? The number that comes to my mind is 12, because think about this. If I start with a 12 and I divide it by 3, what do we end up getting? We end up getting 4. So in this case, the value for W must be equal to 12, and that's the solution to this question. Now in our second example, we have a number H, and we're having H minus 9 equals 10. So we've got to think of a number minus 9 from it, and the answer that we're looking for is a 10. So by inspection, the first number that comes to my mind is 19. So let's think about 19. So if I take away 9 from 19, what do we end up getting as an answer? We get 10. So what does it mean to us? Which means the value for H in this question must be 19, and that is the answer to that question here. So this is what we mean by solving equations by inspection. Now moving on to a final part of our lesson. We're going to guess, check, and improve. Or in other words, we can call it as trial and error, which was the title of today's lesson. So they want us to use guess, check, and improve to solve the equation. Now again, solve the equation means find a value for the pronumeral, so which in this case is x. That's going to satisfy this question. So let's read this question. So 2x plus 12, so which means 2 times x plus 12. And that's equal to 3 times x minus 2. So let's start with a number. Let's start with the value for x. I'm going to say let's use x as 1. So if I use x as 1, 2x minus 2x plus 12. So what do I get? 2 times 1 plus 12 is going to give me 2 plus 12, which is equal to 14. And 3x minus 2. Let's see what we get there. So 3 times 1 take away 2. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 2 is equal to 1. Now obviously 14 is not equal to 1, which means this is not the answer to this question. 14 and 1, they're too far apart, aren't they? So my guess was not correct, so we're going to improve our answer. So I'm going to this time try x equals, let's say 4 for instance. So which means I'm going to have 2 times 4 plus 12. So 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 12 gives me 20. On the other side, 3 times 4 take away 2. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 take away 2 is equal to 10. Now again, 20 is not equal to 10, so which means this answer is also wrong. So let's improve on that. We're still far apart, 20 and 10 are still far away from each other. 7, for instance, x equals 7. Let's see what we get. So 2 times 7 plus 12. So 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 12 gives me 26. 3 times 7, take away 2. So 3 times 7 gives me 21. take away 2 gives me 19. 26 and 19. Oh, we're getting close, aren't we? But again, this is not the right answer because 26 can't be equal to 19. So let's move on. Maybe this time, let's use 10 for instance. I'm going to skip a few values. I'm going to try using 10. So 2 times 10 plus 12. So 2 times 10 is 20. 20 plus 12 gives me 32. Now, 3 times 10 take away 2. 3 times 10 is 30. 30 take away 2 gives me 28. Ooh, we're getting more closer now. 32 and 28, only 4 apart from each other. It's still not the right answer. Let's try one last one. X equals 14. Maybe we might hit the lucky number. 2 times 14 plus 12. 2 times 14, 28. 28 plus 12 gives us 40. 3 times 14, take away 2. 3 times 14 gives us 42. 42 take away 2 gives us 40. Hallelujah. So, what do we notice here? Both the values are exactly the same, which is what we started with, didn't we? 2x plus 12 must be equal to 3x minus 2. So the answer to our question, after all the hard work, is x equals 14. That's it from me today. Have a lovely day, students.